UN voted to condemn President Donald Trump's decision to move our embassy to Jerusalem and demand he apologize. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley has revealed that the president instead offered the naysayers a brilliant surprise. Thanks to 2 terms of Barack Obama's habitual bowing and pathetic submissiveness in favor of global politics, the world has grown accustomed to thinking of the U.S. as a weakened nation, led around on a leash by political correctness. Now that Donald Trump is in office, the international terrorism sponsors and their Western lapdogs are constantly aghast at each Reagan-esque response our no-nonsense leader emits. While Obama allied the U.S. with our most dangerous Islamic enemies, Trump has re-established severed ties with our greatest ally, and only democracy, in the Middle East. However, as the liberal anti-Semites have consistently proven since the love affair with Adolf Hitler, simply expressing affection for Israel, the only Jewish state on earth, will earn the vitriolic wrath. Fortunately, Trump isn't kowtowing to their tantrums and threats. Just as he promised, Trump has once again shown the world that the US is no longer a slave to the United Nations. Haley revealed on Christmas Eve that Trump has announced he has officially reduced the UN's annual funding by a whopping $285 million after he vowed that a vote against his decision to move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem would not be forgotten. Breitbart reports that Haley informed the UN members that their decision to condemn the U.S. in a vote of 128 to 9 and side with human rights violating Islamic countries has forced America to cut their funding. Today, the United Nations agreed on a budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. Haley spoke to the UN on Sunday evening. Among a host of other successes, the United States negotiated a reduction of over $285 million off the 2016-2017 final budget. In addition to these significant cost savings, we reduced the UN's bloated management and support functions, bolstered support for key U.S. priorities throughout the world, and instilled more discipline and accountability throughout the UN system. The inefficiency and overspending of the United Nations are well known. We will no longer let the generosity of the American people be taken advantage of or remain unchecked. This historic reduction in spending, in addition to many other moves toward a more efficient and accountable UN, is a big step in the right direction. While we are pleased with the results of this year's budget negotiations, you can be sure we'll continue to look at ways to increase the UN's efficiency while protecting our interests. Despite Haley warning that a vote against the US to decide where its own embassy should be placed would not go unpunished, the UN chose not only to declare the move null and void but condemn Israel and deny its capital. The United States will remember this day in which it was singled out for attack in the General Assembly for the very act of exercising our right as a sovereign nation, Haley told the Assembly in New York City. America will put our embassy in Jerusalem, she said. No vote in the United Nations will make any difference on that. But this vote will make a difference on how Americans look at the UN. And on how we look at countries who disrespect us in the UN. Disturbingly, even the dozens of nations that receive monetary aid, resources, and cutting-edge technology in medicine from Israel voted to condemn the tiny democracy. Only Guatemala, Honduras, the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, and Togo joined the US and Israel in its favor. When Haley first warned that the US will cut funding to the UN, a Muslim diplomat, who was too cowardly to give his name, slammed the US as a bully. It was then that Haley cleverly retorted that America is simply tired of being taken for granted. The UN gladly takes our money each year, which makes up a large part of their annual budget, but avidly works against our efforts and supports our enemies. The UN has consistently sided with terrorist nations that repeatedly call for Israel's destruction and the annihilation of the Jews, the same countries that offered support for Hitler during the Holocaust. Although Israel faces daily attacks from Palestine, including rockets launched by Hamas and terror attacks targeting Jewish citizens, the UN solely chastises Israel for defending herself. Thankfully, Trump doesn't see the idea of paying a global organization that funds our enemies and attempts to thwart decisions that benefit our citizens and allies as a good one. Instead of paying our adversaries to work against us, we will now let them hate us for free.